I don't know how to put in noises into the audio yet, so choo choo. Let's fucking go. The 2021 season is officially over. We're just a bunch of bums that talk all things NFL and fantasy football. Now that we're going into the offseason, well, before we go into the offseason, let's recap the Super Bowl a little bit. All right, Nick, what is your letter grade for the Super Bowl?
I'll give it like a solid B. Like B, because I actually really enjoyed myself. I like Super Bowls, but I find myself, not really watching ones that my team, the Patriots, aren't in. But I was actually really hyped for it because you got Joe Burrow, who's in his second year, leading a team that was almost dead last, if not dead last year in the Bengals to the Super Bowl. And then the Rams. And I think the Rams are kind of underrated, too, in the past couple of years.
You think the Rams are underrated? What about the Bengals?
Well, very underrated. I think there's two underrated teams that...
I was going to say they were pretty much the underdog going into this. They shouldn't have even made it past the divisional round.
No, I liked it. I was, I'm upset that the Bengals didn't win, but it was a great game, though, back and forth. It wasn't like a shootout. Or not a shootout. It wasn't like a... blowout, yeah.
I agree. I gave it the same grade. It was a good Super Bowl. It was solid. There wasn't a lot of big plays. There wasn't anything that really stood out for me. I kind of include the halftime show and the commercials into it because it's a big event. It's like a holiday for us. So the halftime show, I absolutely loved the performances, but I thought the visuals of it and there was a lack of a spectacle, I guess, and I think it lacked some visuals. It was a little underwhelming, but all in all, I'd rather have the great performances that we had. Dr. Dre, Eminem, Kendrick, Snoop. Yeah, some of those guys should have been the halftime show 30 years ago. So it was awesome to finally see them. I am also a little disappointed Eminem only had one song, but it is what it is. We had some fun commercials too. We had Jim Carrey's Cable Guy callback. That was a pretty funny commercial. We had that 4 or 5 minute long NFL commercials where they popped out of the TV or whatever. That was a lot of fun.
The QR code.
Yeah. I thought that was kind of like a glitch on the TV or something like that.
I was like, oh no, it's broken.
And then I go on TikTok and I see some people going crazy because they're waiting for it to touch the corner of the screen.
Yeah.
I think that's what I was waiting for.
Yeah. But it was a close and really engaging game. The Bengals almost had it, and it ended up being the weakest part of their team, their offensive line, that ended up killing them because Aaron Donald came in and got the final sack, and Joe Burrow even tossed the ball over to HYPETRAIN, who could have made the play. It looked like he could have made the play, but he was just not paying attention, or maybe he hadn't finished his route. I don't know.
I think he was a little bit out of reach, honestly. Yeah. I think it was a little unexpected because, he was watching him getting sacked, and it was unexpected for him to throw the ball.
It was. I get it. I mean,
but it's still in the Super Bowl, though. You gotta stay engaged in the play the whole time, even if it's not designed for you. Because especially on a 4th and 1, when the game's on the line like that, I don't care if you're all the way down the field as a wide receiver or if you're like P. Ryan, 1 yard, you might be in play.
Like the dig sideline. He turned that play into...
a couple years ago with Minnesota. Yeah.
Minnesota Miracle, yeah.
Yeah. No, he was engaged the whole time, and he ended up getting the ball. I mean, I think P. Ryan hasn't had the best playoff performance. I know he's a backup running back, but...
They really needed to utilize Mixon a lot more, and trying to throw P. Ryan in there to throw them off, I think, was just overthinking it. Joe Mixon had a great year, and I think they needed to run the ball a little bit more with Mixon. They needed to stay true a little bit to that, because once the Rams knew that the game plan was just to try to push the ball downfield and pass with Burrow, it was all gung-ho with that defensive front. They're easily the best defensive front that they played all postseason. And once the Rams knew that the Bengals were just going to be using the passing game to get downfield, right? You got Aaron Donald being double and triple teamed in the front, which leaves Leonard Floyd and Von Miller being able to rush the edges.
I don't know about you guys, but I thought that was both coaches had a really bad performance, like coaching wise. And I know like the announcers too mentioned that after the game. I can't remember who it was, but I mean, Sean McVay, it seemed like he started coaching in the second half, to be honest, because the center, I can't remember his name, for the Bengals offensive line, that he was able to double team Donald because there was only 4 men rushing instead of 5. And then Sean McVay in the second half, for whatever reason, rushed 5. And that's when Joe Burrow started getting into trouble, started getting sacks. So I just feel like, I don't know, I feel like the Rams were kind of like going easy in the first half, even though they wouldn't, which leads me to believe that it was just bad coaching in the first half.
Well, they are 2 young coaches, so Super Bowl's a lot of pressure for.
It was the youngest coaching matchup in a Super Bowl,
Right.
which is interesting, and maybe that played a part in it, is the fact that they don't have a lot of experience. Well, McVay has experience
Right.
in a Super Bowl, but it looked like he had learned from his mistake where he was trying to stay a little true to the run game when instead on that last drive they needed to make sure to get over 70 yards and just tried to burn the clock and say, let's just make sure we can get downfield and not give Joe Burrow enough time to come back and score.
Right.
That, and he trusted his defensive line with all those playmakers to keep that offense from getting anywhere, because once the second half hit, minus that touchdown coming right out of the second half, they absolutely dominated Joe Burrow in that O-line. So in my opinion, the game was pretty much over there. So, all right, Dom, what was your grade for the Super Bowl before we start getting into real detail?
I think it was an A because it was unexpected, and I think everyone wanted the Bengals and LA to go to the Super Bowl, and Joe Burrow is just so good.
So you're talking. No, I agree. So Dominic's talking about the hype around the Super Bowl. So I think,
and honestly that's a good transition into what my next topic was going to be is, culture change in 2 different ways in the NFL and with the Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Burrow in just 1 year starting has, I believe, completely changed the culture in Cincinnati, and they are now going to have some high expectations going into next year as long as they can take care of that offensive line. But we're hearing a lot of commentators and NFL analysts already talking about how unlikely it is for them to get back. So do we think that they're going to continue to be underdogs for the next couple years, or do you think that after they take care of their offensive line, maybe with a couple draft picks, couple free agents, that they're going to be a little higher on the
totem pole?
Higher as far as projected standings going into next year.
I think unfortunately I think they're going to be underdogs or considered underdogs for a while. I mean, which is only
going to be good for fans in the league, because everyone loves a good underdog, especially me. I love a good underdog story, and that's part of the reason why I was rooting for Joe Burrow and the Bengals to keep going this year, because after Joe Burrow got sacked 9 times against the Tennessee Titans, that's not supposed to happen. No. That's kind of the one thing you need going into the playoffs, or the one thing that's going to keep you from making it any further, if you can make it further into the playoffs at all, is having a good offensive line. So the fact that Joe Burrow was the most, including the regular season, was the most sacked quarterback by a mile. He was sacked over 70 times, including the postseason.
I honestly don't think there could have been any other quarterback drafted by the Bengals when they drafted Joe Burrow that could have changed the culture for the Bengals like he did, because you could tell after he won the national championship for the LSU, he was smoking that cigar, that viral video.
He's just got the swagger, dude. Everyone just loves him.
He's a stud. And then to take a team that was so bad, like laughable bad.
They only had 4 wins the previous year.
Right? Yeah. And then lead them to the Super Bowl. It's not like he led them to like a wild card appearance and they got out. But to the Super Bowl, his second year, or first full year of playing, because he got injured his first year, I think it's changed. I think they're a winning organization now.
I think the Bengals got lucky with Jamar Chase, because thought they needed an offensive line, and then they went and drafted Jamar Chase, and everyone
That's what I
was
thought.
clowning on them, including me. But then it turned out it paid off a lot.
It did. So what's interesting about that is they probably wouldn't have gotten as far as they did or had as dynamic of an offense as they did without drafting Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
But that offensive line still ended up being what killed them in the end.
Well, I think this draft, I think this is where they make the moves for the offensive line because
They have to.
From what I've heard, it's a pretty deep class for offensive linemen, and so I think they're going to be able to get a sneaky pick in the late of the first round, early second, and I think they're going to start rebuilding that offensive line.
Well, they have to.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think they kind of knew what they were doing last year. I think now hearing that the offensive line class is so stacked, I think that makes me feel better, right, of that Jamar Chase pick. Even though I've seen all the things that he did this year, I think the people that were drafting knew what they were doing. They had a long game. It wasn't a short, oh, look at this shiny new toy, for wide receiver. Let's go pick him up.
Right. So this is our first episode, and I'll go ahead and introduce us right now. My name is Brendan Martin. I got my co-host with me here, Nick Siebert, and we have our buddy Jason Worcester, who unfortunately caught the vid prior to recording our first episode. But I've got my little brother here, Dominic Martin. Say hi.
Hi.
All right.
I'll be filling in for Jason when he's out, or Nick.
Or me.
Yeah.
So, all right. All right, now let's get back into it. So I've got some notes from Jason, because he's still with us in spirit. His Super Bowl grade was a B+, saying that it was an exciting game with a great ending, and he's giving bonus points because it ended up the way that he wanted. For those of you out there, he is a Detroit Lions fan, so he was one of those guys cheering for Stafford.
Yeah.
He says there were not many exciting plays, which we talked about earlier.
I think there was quite a few.
Well, with the Rams faking the field goal, cut passing,
the holding,
it didn't end up doing anything. But then he said he always loves a non-QB touchdown pass, talking about the Joe Mixon pass.
Yeah.
That was pretty fun to watch.
Yeah. I think everyone that's not in California wanted the Bengals to go all the way and win the Super Bowl.
Actually, what I saw for the Super Bowl ratings was that Detroit was number 2 in Super Bowl ratings, so you saw a lot of Detroit Lions fans cheering on Matt Stafford from that point. But the story of Joe Burrow really hyping things up, the underdog story of the Cincinnati Bengals never winning a Super Bowl. What was interesting about this Super Bowl is I feel like it was the story of Joe Burrow and the fact that the Bengals had never won a Super Bowl versus the Rams, which I don't think was a cohesive narrative. I think it's a bunch of stories mixed into one.
Right.
Because you've got the quarterback who arguably is underrated and has been easily a top 10 quarterback in the league for the past 12 seasons, but has been held down by the worst organization in the league, the Detroit Lions. And then you've got the supposedly, but he wasn't, old and washed offensive lineman who was drafted and played for the Cincinnati Bengals, so he played his former team, and after Brady retired, he became the oldest starting player in the entire league. I'm talking about Andrew Whitworth, by the way.
Right. Big Whit,
yeah. He ended up winning the Walter Payton Man of the Year and a Super Bowl ring, and he had a great career, and I don't see any better way of going out. And then we have Aaron Donald, so arguably definitely top 5, if not top 3 defensive player of all time. Who has now topped off his career with a ring.
I don't think he retires personally. I think he's going to run it back, right? Another season or two. I mean, he's 32, right? Yeah, I think he's 32.
No, he's 30.
30.
He's
okay.
30 even.
So
I don't think he retires. I mean, he mentioned in the parade that he'd like to run it back. I don't know why there were rumors about Sean McVay retiring, because, I mean, he's looking for, after being the youngest coach or one of the youngest coaches in the league, making it to a Super Bowl and now winning one, you think he's going to get he's gonna get a big contract. I don't see why he would retire.
And like the thing is, like the only way that he's going to retire, especially being that young, is if he gets promoted up in the front office. So like if he gets a position like GM or something like fancy, like something appealing like that. I don't think he's just gonna call
Sean
it quits.
McVay seems like such a player's guy. I don't see him being like a higher up. He seems like a true coach to me.
Yeah. I don't think Aaron Donald's going to retire. He's considering it, and he's still so good that I think they can make it to another Super Bowl again.
They could, if they can bring those players back like the Bucs tried to do. They can make a decent run as long as they can stay away from too many injuries.
So now that we've kind of talked about the game here, let's talk about the MVP.
Cooper Kupp.
What do you think, Brandon?
Kupp. I'm so happy that he won the MVP. Once I saw Matt Stafford drive down the field targeting Cooper Kupp and him making great catches and showing everybody why he's the best wide receiver in the league right now, and then caps it off with a nice fade catch in the end zone against Eli Apple, immediately thought he needs to get the MVP.
Yeah.
I understand. I can see why they would give it to Aaron Donald, because what kind of sucks about Aaron Donald is that because he's not an edge threat, he's a true defensive tackle, you're not going to see a lot of flash he's not going to jump off the screen necessarily because he's too busy getting double and triple teamed every single play. But that's what's great about Aaron Donald, because that leaves your other edge threats, Von Miller and Leonard Floyd, that are able to attack the quarterback. So it's almost like he's a true team player in that sense.
That's why you pay for that position guys like that get double teamed. I feel like you pay them because they get all these flashy stats.
Yeah.
But then you pay them even more when their stats start to decline, because then you see like the double teams.
He was truly disruptive though.
Right.
He's a great leader for that defense. But either way, Cooper Kupp with 92 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns and the winning touchdown. I mean, on that last drive, I truly believe there is no chance that Matt Stafford and the Rams march down that field and score that touchdown to take the lead and win the game without Cooper Kupp.
Cooper Kupp with Matt Stafford, and when I saw that Robert Woods was out, I knew he was going to do really well.
So you like the MVP pick too?
Yeah. And I think OBJ has bounced back a little. And I think he's good, but with that injury, I don't think he can make another return.
Yeah, he tore his ACL in the same knee, and he's going to need surgery again. I feel bad for the guy, but I'm also happy for him now that he's won a ring. And he caught a touchdown in that game. I mean, he was productive, and he was definitely a part of the success. I can see it being difficult for him to try to move on, wanting to come back. But I would also argue that now that he's injured that same knee again and it being serious enough to have surgery again, it's not like he's going to be offered a big contract.
Yeah.
For me, I see it being more worth it to just retire.
So, yeah, especially with Robert Woods coming back. I mean, he's going to be a 4 wide receiver.
So I get why Cooper Kupp is the MVP. I'm not too happy about it, but I get it, right? He deserves it.
Right.
But, like, personally, I like to see the MVP be the quarterback, because I feel like they do the most in the offense, between, things that the stats you don't see. So, like, the pre-snap checkdowns, the audibles, right? Things on the line that you don't really see. But I think what really made it so Matt Stafford did not get the MVP was the fact that he had 2 interceptions in that game. Even though he had almost a 90 QBR rating, I think those 2 interceptions really kind of got him in. They killed him.
Killed him, yeah.
I mean, he got 283 yards, not the best, not the worst, but
we'll establish right now, without a doubt, one of those touchdowns was one of those interceptions was not his fault.
Right.
But one of them definitely was that he threw in the end zone. So I would say he was able to bring his team back, but like I said earlier, I don't think it would have happened without Cooper Kupp, and that's the definition of the MVP. It stands for the most valuable player. And I think the most valuable player, when they needed it in that moment, was Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
And that was the same case with the game before against the Bucks when they threw it downfield to Cooper Kupp.
Two games before. They played the Niners before that. But yeah, we get what you're saying. So now that we're on the topic of Cooper Kupp and we've established he deserved the Super Bowl MVP, he has now had the greatest single season as a wide receiver ever. He went from winning the Triple Crown, making it to a Super Bowl, and winning the Super Bowl MVP. So now, I want to say this. To be considered a Hall of Famer, according to the board, you need to have at least 3 years of true dominance at your position. You need to have something that has changed the game, some records. Like, you need to have really stood out and be one of, if not the best at your position for at least 3 years. Now, Cooper Kupp just had the greatest wide receiver single season ever. If he has 2 more years of at least 1,500 yards, double-digit touchdowns, and maybe a couple more playoff wins, do you guys consider him to be in the Hall of Fame?
Yes.
If that happens, yes. But I'm not... I'm pulling the brakes on the hype train right now about him being Hall of Fame.
A little foreshadowing.
Yeah, a little foreshadowing. But
segment coming up later.
But, I mean, I don't want to seem like a Cooper Kupp hater. I just don't think he's really proven it yet. I mean, I think he had a great season, right? I mean, I like to see...
The best season.
Well, I like to see this happen next year when Robert Woods is back. I mean, I don't know if he'll continue, have 2 1,500-yard seasons. I mean, I think if he does, then obviously Hall of Fame. But I'm not ready to crown him a Hall of Fame based on...
So as of right now, that's why I emphasize needing to be dominant at your position for at least 3 years.
Right.
Although he has just had the greatest season of all time for his position, I don't think it's quite enough to consider him a Hall of Famer just because of one great year. You need to prove yourself as one of the best to ever play the game. That's what a Hall of Famer is.
It's like Michael Thomas. You wouldn't consider Michael Thomas a Hall of Famer because of that one season.
Oh, where he caught 100% of his targets and broke the reception record.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
And I think Cooper Kupp's time is running out because he's 28. As of now, when we film this, he's 28 years old, which is starting to be the tail end of his career. So if he's going to be a Hall of Famer, I think what Brandon said earlier, having 2 straight seasons of 1,500 yards needs to happen because, I mean, the older he gets, we know this, for any player, their production starts to decline. So I don't know if, this is like the top of the mountain for Cooper Kupp's production is just going to go downhill, or we're just seeing, a little plateau and it's going to continue going up.
I think it's still going to be the same way because when they have Robert Woods back, it's going to spread out the field and they're going to have to contain Robert Woods as well. And
when Robert Woods was playing, Cooper Kupp was still having that kind of production at the beginning of the season. It really didn't seem to make a difference. All right, so now to kind of top off the Super Bowl talks, I don't want to leave it on a bad note, but arguably there were some, well, not arguably, there were some pretty bad calls during the Super Bowl, and I have these down to kind of talk about. We have, coming out of the second half, we have that pass to T. Higgins for that long touchdown from Burrow where he yanked Jalen Ramsey's face mask, and it was pretty clear that was a hard face mask or offensive pass interference. I don't quite know which it would be.
Yeah, I think that obviously should have been cleared, and I think everyone thought that too. And I think that call being calling changed the game completely.
I think that really swung the momentum over, and once I saw that, I thought, wow, the Bengals really have a chance to win this. I think that could have killed the Rams' confidence.
I personally liked all those calls not being called. I mean, like
Let them play.
All those flags. I like letting them play. I mean, it's a Super Bowl. You got millions of viewers, right? The last thing you want, if you're the NFL, is a game that goes long because they're calling flags left and right. And I mean, T. Higgins had a face mask not called right later in the game.
Right.
So I think that's kind of like a makeup call. So I think it went both ways, for both teams. And I like the no calls. It made it physical.
What frustrates me is the inconsistency because the flags really started to come out in the last 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And I get it when it's coming down to the wire. I can understand why they would be a little nitpicky, but I really think they should have been more consistent because I think what really ruined the game for the Bengals was that call on linebacker Logan Wilson. He was called on a hold on Cooper Kupp, which was very picky, or like what some analysts and commentators are saying, it's very ticky-tacky, especially if you're going in with the let them play mentality, even with it being in the last 2 minutes. It swung the momentum back over to the Rams, but I do want to say this. It may have evened out. I think 2 wrongs don't make a right. I think they should have been more consistent with their calling. But even with allowing the T. Higgins touchdown, and if they hadn't called Logan Wilson on that hold, I don't think it would have changed the outcome of the game, because the story of the game, or in the second half, was the defensive front for the Rams. So no matter the call, I think the Rams still would have won this game. But again, I do wish the calling had been a little bit more consistent. But I like the fact that they let them play.
Yeah, I mean, when you have referees, that were letting them play the whole game, in the last 2 minutes of the game, start calling those tic-tacky penalties, that's just the refs trying to take control of the game, And I don't really agree with that. If you're going to just let him play the whole game, not in the crunch time when it's 2 minutes left, start calling flags, because that's, I take that as them deciding what penalties to call and not to call. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. It's them trying to control the game a little bit.
Yeah. I understand. All in all, it was a good Super Bowl.
Right.
So now we've pretty much recapped the 21 season. Now going into the offseason, talk about some news. So earlier, over a week ago, we saw Kyler Murray erase everything involving the Arizona Cardinals from his Instagram page, and we were wondering what was going on with that. I personally think it might be a ploy or a hint at him wanting his big contract, because he hasn't gotten paid yet, and he's gotten banged up in the latter half of the last 2 seasons. So I think he's getting a little worried that because people are still skeptical because of his size and the fact that he's gotten a little banged up, that the Arizona Cardinals are kind of holding off on that contract that he's arguably deserving of.
Here's the thing. Kyler Murray is really good. And I think, he does... He doesn't do that great second half of the season, but he still does really good.
Yeah, all in all, he's still... I'm trying to think. I know there's a couple quarterbacks in this league that are 26 years old. I know Mahomes is 26.
He's only 24. Right. Kyler Murray's only 24, but I think the thing is, as a quarterback, you got to take it both ways. When things go right, you're the reason why. Right? You get the most attention. Oh, it's because Kyler Murray played well. When things go bad, right, as a quarterback of the leader of the team, then you start getting finger pointed. I'm not saying it's right, and I think the Cardinals shouldn't be, especially with Hopkins getting injured, and he has to throw to Christian Kirk, in the tail end of the season. But he wants to get paid. He's seeing Josh Allen making $44 million a year. Okay, you see Patrick Mahomes that has a 10-year, $500 million contract, signed the year before, and then he hears about Lamar Jackson. Okay, granted he's an MVP, but
Lamar hasn't gotten his contract either.
No, but they're saying that it's going to go hot. Like the analyzers are saying it's going to be record breaking. And so, if I'm Kyler Murray, I'm 24 years old. Yes, quarterbacks have a longer life in the NFL than most players. I mean, he's still young. He wants that money.
Right. The point I was making earlier was that he's still one of the best younger quarterbacks in the league, and without a doubt isn't deserving of a big contract, especially since they had with D-Hop, they had the most productive offense in the league, and doing that while they were in the best division in football.
Yeah, I think you pay the man. I mean, you defensively, you're all set. I mean, you got J.J. Watt. And then,
how much longer is he in, though?
But as of now, how the situation is,
right?
I mean, if I was a GM, I'd pay Kyler. I'll pay him a 10-year contract, right? Not $500 million, because I don't think he's on the same level as Patrick Mahomes, but a little bit shy, maybe $400 million, something like that. Still a lot.
That is a lot.
Well, but for after 10 years, that's like what, $40 million a year. That's I think that gives Kyler Murray a vote of confidence. If I'm saying that right.
How about this? So considering this just popped up in my head. So this is a segment that I'm probably going to bring up at random at times. That's a little fun, a little game that I like to play called Would You Rather. So each of you have an NFL franchise, right? And you're looking for that big quarterback, and you don't want to invest too much of your cap space in a quarterback that you think would need too much help, or that you think would not be able to carry the team when needed. So between Kyler Murray and Dak Prescott, let's say they're the same age, which would you have?
Kyler Murray.
Franchise?
Kyler Murray, easily.
Really?
Because Dak, Kyler Murray is just better than Dak.
Because Dak got his big contract. That's kind of why I'm bringing this up. So, I mean, if you think Dak deserves that contract, then without a doubt, Kyler Murray would as well. So I think Dak is in a much easier division.
Yeah, Dak Prescott had 4,449 passing yards, and he had 37 touchdowns, which is great, right? But he has more help than Kyler Murray. And so, he had an injury, his ankle injury, so he is injury prone. I think Kyler Murray, he's mobile, kind of like Lamar Jackson, and he's still got a good arm. Yes, he's undersized, but like Drew Brees. Drew Brees was undersized too, but look at him, he's a Hall of Famer. I think Kyler Murray has more upside, but if you were going to go safe call, like a safe play, it would be Dak. But if I'm starting a franchise right now, I'm going out. I'm starting my first season swinging Kyler Murray all the way.
Yeah, and I think Dak is more consistent than Kyler Murray, but I think Kyler Murray has, just like Nick said, more mobile. And
he's got that rushing factor.
Yeah, and I think even if he doesn't have a great O-line, he can extend plays really well, and I think I would take a little bit of a risk, and I would go Kyler Murray.
Right, he still had 3,787 passing yards with that bad of an O-line. He was running for his life most of the time that last season.
No, that's a good point.
He had 24 touchdowns.
This is all without D-Hop, too.
Right, and he's, his last game on February 6th in the AFC Championship, he had a QBR rating of 103.9, and that's without Hopkins, the best wide receiver option. He had a game of 136.9 QBR rating. These numbers are ridiculous for a QBR rating. He had 129 one week in the season as well. His upside is huge. I'd build around him. I'd give him a big contract for 10 years, and I'd say, you know what? This is what we're doing. And as a QB, that's what you want, though. It's not like he's going to get that money and be like, all right, see, I'm going to start taking vacations, and his play is going to decline. That's going to give him the confidence to work harder, like Tom Brady worked hard. Not saying that, but he's going to still be motivated in the gym. He's going to be talking to his buddies, thinking that he can start recruiting because he feels invested in the program, and that's going to help with free agents.
And you can argue that what Dak is known for is his intangibles, but I think I would be willing to swallow that for the upside of Kyler Murray.
Yeah, and I think... what was I going to say?
Because, also, you're going to have drama. I'm not saying Kyler Murray is the next Aaron Rodgers where you're just going to see drama and, open and blatant disagreements and sourness with his head coach and this and that. So it was reported that Kyler was frustrated, said to be finger pointing and being self-centered, and his response to that, he says, "I play this game for the love of it. My teammates, everyone who has helped me get to this position that believed in me and to win championships. All of this nonsense is not what I'm about, never has been, never will be. Anyone who has ever stepped between those lines with me knows how hard I go." So he kind of fixed it, but I would also argue he's the one who started it, because we didn't know anything about this until he deleted all those posts on his Instagram.
I think Kyler Murray, he is there to win. And I mean, without D-Hop, with his hands, and I think he's the most talented in the league.
Yeah, so you're high on Kyler Murray like we are too.
Yeah.
And I mean, Kyler Murray's only 24 years old. He's still a young guy, right? He's got some maturing to do, not gonna lie. But also, I think it's just,
everyone does, and that comes with being an NFL starting quarterback.
Right.
All the light is on you. You are borderline royalty in America.
I mean, you got Aaron Rodgers, who is 30, right? Or
40.
40, sorry.
Rodgers is 40.
He's 40. He's pulling worse drama right now. I mean, I think it's just the offseason. I think it's all these ESPN sports analysts trying to find something to report about. I mean,
right.
He unfollowed, or he liked certain posts on social media. I mean, to me, that's not the biggest end of the world. It's not like he went out there and said, "I'm unhappy with the organization. This is a bad run organization. I want out."
So before we get into our segment for today, I have one more thing that I wanted to mention. So I don't know if this is actually a big rumor or thing going around, but it was mentioned on Undisputed with Skip and Shannon, because Skip is such a diehard Cowboys fan. Skip, I guess, talked about the Cowboys possibly offering Micah Parsons and a first-round pick to the Rams for Aaron Donald.
Well,
what do you guys think about that?
Well, see, here's the thing about Aaron Donald. If he's already considering retirement just because of a Super Bowl, I don't think you trade away a really, really good young talent like Micah Parsons for Aaron Donald. He could easily
be the best edge threat outside linebacker in the league.
And a first-round pick. And so I agree with Dominic, because what does the Cowboys defense needs help, right? You got a young stud like Parsons, and then you can use that first round pick to draft, right? This draft,
draft some help.
Well, this draft class is heavy on corners, so you can draft a corner. It's defense heavy this draft class, so I think you can get more help for your team just keeping the first round pick.
Dude, Micah Parsons, okay, I can kind of see where the Cowboys are coming from in that they maybe wouldn't have to pay Aaron Donald as much because he's already 30 years old, and Micah Parsons is probably going to end up getting his big contract. He still has a few years left of it. It was his rookie year this past season. But I think it's a terrible idea, because you're trading one transcendent defensive leader for another. The only difference is age and maybe price, because Micah Parsons is going to have a big contract, but I think it's going to be worth it.
I think Micah Parsons, if he gets developed into something,
I think he is developed, dude. Minus TJ Watt, he was the best defensive player this year.
Yeah, I think he can be another TJ Watt. And I mean, if you trade away a first round pick and him for Aaron Donald, I don't think that's good. I think they're overpaying.
If I'm the Rams, it depends on when this was offered. If this was offered during the season, I wouldn't be as well. Either way, if I was the Rams and the Cowboys offered me Parsons and a first round pick for Aaron Donald, I'd take that. I'd take that, and I say, you know what, Cowboys, don't fill out any of the paperwork. I'll send one of my assistants down to Dallas to fill it out for you. Because I take that all day. I mean, your defense as the Rams gets so much better.
And I think the Cowboys need to keep that first round pick and get a DB or a free safety, because I mean, Trayvon Diggs. Yeah, he has good hands. He can turn over the ball, but I mean, it seems like every other play he gets cooked downfield. And
you don't want to know why you think that?
Why?
Because he actually gave up the most yards this season as a single corner.
Yeah, because all he wanted was the ball, and I mean, him overplaying, it led to him giving up the most yards.
Yep, he played very aggressive. I mean, and good for him. He seems like a good player, but
I wouldn't want him as my number one corner.
But without Micah Parsons and Trayvon Diggs having a great run for the first third or first half of the season, that's not a good defense, dude.
Yeah. No, like for fantasy wise, I actually, one of my leagues, I picked up the Cowboys defense because of how hyped they were and all of the young players like Parsons. And then Trayvon Diggs. And I could use him for the first third of the season, like you were saying. And then I had to bench him because Diggs was getting burned, like Dominic was saying. And they weren't reliable. So as of now, for fantasy, I don't think you draft the Cowboys defense. I think
people will, though.
Right,
next
they
year.
will.
I think the second half of the season, they started to figure out Diggs. I mean, put a double move route on him. He bites, and then you just turn upfield and you're gone.
Now, I'll say this. I think Dan Quinn, as new defensive coordinator, did a great job with what he had, so I think maybe that'll make a difference, but I don't see the Cowboys being another top 5 defense next year. It was really because of turnovers and because of how hyper-aggressive that defense played. You're not going to get consistency out of that. You're going to get a great year. You're going to get ups and downs because they had a lot of games where their defense really didn't come in if they couldn't get those turnovers. So I think they keep Micah Parsons and they keep trying to build that defense.
Yeah, I mean, when you got an aging Van Der Esch too as a middle linebacker.
Yeah, he was really good when he came in, but now he's kind of, I don't know, kind of disappeared.
Boise State,
he's washed.
He's washed.
Yeah.
He's getting, what Dominic's trying to say is he's getting older. And as you know, right, I was listening to a podcast, one of the Patriots podcasts, and they had a woman on there from England, and she actually had an interesting take. Defense has a lot to do with speed for the linebackers, and I think that's the same situation. I think Van Der Esch, the reason why he was such a force earlier in his career was because he had that speed. Now that he's older, I think as the Cowboys owner, because we all know it's Jerry Jones making the moves on draft night. He
wants all the credit.
Right. You start drafting defense. I think offensively you're set. The only thing I would say is maybe get a new quarterback. But, I mean, or a running back for Tony Pollard, for the future.
Tony Pollard. I have been calling it since last season. Tony Pollard is going to take over Zeke's job.
But okay, talent-wise, I think he should because he's better than Zeke right now, but he won't because Zeke is the highest paid running back in the league, and to not utilize him is going to be a complete waste.
Jerry Jones does not want to be wrong because if he benched after that contract extension for Elliott, right, because he was out, this was a couple years ago, he was on vacation, and do you know what the country is called? Kabul? No.
Elliott?
Yeah.
I don't know, no.
So he was on vacation and...
Oh, you mean right before he got his contract?
Yes.
Okay,
that big situation was going down. He eventually pays high for Elliott. I think he doesn't want to be wrong. And if you bench him for Tony Pollard or let Tony Pollard get the majority of the snaps, I think that proves to him that he was wrong for extending Elliott.
They want to get their money's worth. And here's the thing. I would want to do the same, but at the same time, I mean, look at what Tony Pollard's doing even as a backup.
It's because you're sensible. I mean, you have skin. We all have skin in the game because of fantasy. But like Jerry Jones, this is real money and everything. And I think he's so far into the whole situation that he really can't see, like what Dominic was saying. Like he can't understand that eventually running backs, no matter how much you pay them, they get older and they become less effective, and you're going to have young guys like Tony Pollard that, for the better of your team, that you need to give the majority of the snaps to.
Yeah, Zeke's contract is basically a reward or a result of what he's already done, not what he was going to continue to do.
Right.
Because he's not the same. He's not as explosive. His first 3 years leading the league in rushing or being top 3 in rushing with that offensive line is where he shined, and unfortunately they couldn't make a run during that time, and now the Cowboys are stuck with his contract. And
I think Tony Pollard. I think he's not a must draft for fantasy drafts. But
God.
if it's like a rookie, I think you draft him. I think you draft and stash because eventually he's going to get that starting job. And if not, whatever.
Pollard.
Yeah, Pollard.
Yeah.
I think he's a good buy low candidate.
As far as fantasy goes, Zeke is, and I have been saying the past year, at least since last year, he's a downtrending player, and I don't want to be caught holding the bag where I'm drafting him because he's still producing as a top 10 running back, but that's only because of his volume and his target share.
Yeah.
Ezekiel Elliott, right now ranked going to 22 out of all the positions, is ranked 46, and I think that proves Brandon's statement of that he's declining. He's a declining player, and I touch him in the late rounds. If I needed a good third option running back or a second option, but he's not top of my draft board for sure.
But here's what you do. Zeke is declining, and while he's still, good, not great, while he's like right in the middle and he's declining, you trade him. He's trade value. I think that's what I would do.
Are you talking in real life or for fantasy?
Real life.
Oh, okay.
All right, all aboard the hype train. Okay, this is what I've been most excited about. So basically in this segment, what we're going to do is I have a list of players, and based on the year they just had and going into projections for next year, do we think their hype train is legit? And the way we're going to do that is we're going to say whether we're riding first class, second class, selling my ticket, and
pump the brakes.
Yes. Or we're going to pump the brakes on the situation and talk about why we think that player is either overrated or we're hopping off that hype train metaphorically. Okay, so first player we're going to talk about is Jonathan Taylor. After the year
first class. He's so good. He has, did you see the week he had versus the Jaguars? Yes, they're really bad.
Yeah.
But look at what Jonathan Taylor doing. I had him on my fantasy team, and I think he is just explosive, and I think he had the best running back season in the league, and I think he's the best running back in the league.
And I'm also first class ticket because he ended the season as the ranked number 2 for the positions, and then for the 102, and then for going to next year he is 101. And I think as long as you still have Carson Wentz as a quarterback, or not like a passing quarterback, I would say, I think the focus of the Colts offense is going to be pound the ball. And so I think that's great for fantasy, for standard leagues especially, but for PPR, because that's what we do.
Yes, just so for you listeners, we play in full PPR leagues, so that makes target share and receptions a lot more valuable.
Yeah, and I think he's going to become the safety blanket for Carson Wentz, who's trying to fight for his NFL career. Because I think if he gets cut, especially if he gets cut, I don't think there's going to be a lot of teams that are really looking at him to be a QB1. He might hop on a team as a QB2. So I think he's going to be relying on their young stud, Jonathan Taylor, as a safety blanket. And I think that's just going to skyrocket his fantasy points this year. I'd draft him 101 right now if I was drafting right now.
Yep. So Jonathan Taylor is projected to be the 101 next year. Our buddy Jason he's riding first class on his hype train because he thinks he's the clear 101 next year, period. And I wouldn't disagree with that, but I'm going to say this. Minus targets and receptions, I honestly believe Nick Chubb could do as good a job running with that offensive line.
Oh yeah.
And with that offensive coach as Taylor.
Right, but he's not. It's Jonathan Taylor.
Well, here's the thing. Nick Chubb is really good, but Hunt is right behind him, and I think that hurts Chubb a lot.
Well, my point is I believe as a pure rusher, being in that situation with the Colts, I think Nick Chubb could do almost as good a job as Taylor. I'm not trying to take away from Taylor's talent. I think right now he's showing to be a top 3 running back in this league. As far as fantasy goes and where I stand with this, I'm in second class on his hype train. So I'm basically saying... you can't reach for him because he's the 101. So I'm basically saying in second class, I'm along for the ride, okay? I would be willing to take him at the 101.
But you're not upset if you don't get him, essentially.
Right, because I'm not saying I wouldn't, but if I have the 101, I am not taking him.
You're not taking him as the 101.
You're not taking him.
Derrick Henry is far and away the best running back in this league.
So to me, I think that's, pump the brakes right there.
Yeah,
I think that's...
No, because I think Jonathan Taylor is worthy of the 101, and if you take him, you can't get any higher than the first overall pick, and Jonathan Taylor is worth that. But if I have the number 1 overall pick, I'm taking Derrick Henry because with the touches that he had up until week 8, he was on pace to break the rushing attempt record, the touch record, and he was also on pace to have over 2,100 rushing yards this season.
Well,
so right now
he was absolutely dominant, and for that reason, he has not as good. I mean, he has a great head coach, but he doesn't have as good an O-line or a situation as JT is. I trust Derrick Henry over JT.
He's ranked 25th right now for all the players. I mean, and ranked at the end for 2022, and then at the end of the season, he is ranked not in the top 5. And so I think he's getting older. He is 27 years old. He just had foot surgery where he has metal in his foot. I don't think he's going to get the workload that he normally does.
See, I've been saying that the past 2 years, and his workload got even bigger.
I mean, I'm going to draft him if I have the 102. I'm going to draft him, but I don't think
he's 101. I'm not saying Jonathan Taylor is not worth the 101. He definitely is. But me personally, if I have the 101, I'm taking Derrick Henry, but I'd take JT with the 102.
I hope I have 102 then. I really do. I hope in our draft you get 101, pick Henry, I get 102, get Taylor, and there we go.
I want the 4. I mean...
Now, if you are in a keeper or dynasty league, JT in a startup draft anywhere is definitely the way to go with Henry's age. As big and dominant as he is right now, he is 27 years old, and you don't want to be caught, quote unquote, holding the bag and having him when he eventually starts to decline. JT is on the rise and is about to hit his prime, and he couldn't be in a better situation.
I think, well, here's the thing. You said that you talked about Derrick Henry and declining and stuff, and you've been saying that for the past 2 years, but you're wrong, and here's why. All those agility and speedy running backs, they decline because they get older, they're less speedy, but Derrick Henry, he's all about his size. Everything about him is about his size, and he has a really good stiff arm, and I mean, as long as he stays healthy and strong, it's not like he's going to shrink. So I think age doesn't matter when it comes to Derrick Henry because it's not like he's agile or losing any speed.
So you take JT at the 101, but if you have the 102 or 103 in a startup draft, you're taking Henry and you trust him for the next three years.
Easily.
Okay. All right. Number 2, Cooper Kupp. Nick, where do you stand?
Sell my ticket.
Really?
Oh, I'm selling high on him. Oh my goodness. I have him in one sleeper league right now. He is my wide receiver 1, and I have Brandon Cooks behind him. And I do have a good running back core of Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey. This is a dynasty league. But I'm trading. I think he is a guy that you can, if you have a weaker team, or if you have a team that has some holes in there, or that you want to even upgrade a position or 2, you trade him. Because you could get picks, first-round picks, and a player, or a pick or a player, or you can get a couple, pretty solid players to round out your team. And so, personally, I'm trying to get rid of them. But at the end of the day, if I feel like I'm getting lowballed for the offer. I'm fine with keeping him.
So in a redraft league then, or a startup draft, it is looking like Cooper Kupp is probably going to be a first-round pick. Where is your stance on that? Do you take him in the first round?
No, because right now for 2022 he's ranked number 22. So that's the second round-ish, right? Yeah, second round-ish.
Yes.
Yeah, early, mids.
I think he's a second or third round pick. I think he's going to get drafted higher in the first round for sure. So he's not going to be available for there. But I'm not going to take him over somebody like Devontae Adams, who's ranked right now 19. So beginning second round, or a running back. I think this year, you draft, a running back, or like Justin Jefferson right now, who's ranked 5th. I think, or Jamar Chase. And I think there's better wide receivers, because Jamar Chase right now is ranked number 2, right behind Jonathan Taylor for next year. And so this is updated as February 19th of the rankings. And I think with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, you pick one of those. I think Cooper Kupp is not worth it for Dynasty.
Well, what about redraft though?
No,
for just 1 year next year, you still wouldn't take him?
No, I still get Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson, because Justin Jefferson has a. I think he has a better workload because he's the stud wide receiver 1. Same thing as Jamar Chase. Even though he has T. Higgins behind him, he's the focal point of the offense. And with Matt Stafford, right, he has Higbee for tight end. He has Robert Woods. And then if Odell Beckham comes back, Jr., you got him. So I think I would rather go with one of the young guys.
Well, here's the thing, Nick. So here's the thing. OBJ, yeah, he might come back, but is he really gonna do that good that he's gonna interrupt?
He's still gonna get targets.
No.
Look what he did in New York. He did not get enough targets that he thought, so he was over there fighting punting nets. He was kicking there. He was making such a commotion that then he was pretty much forced to go to the Browns. And what happened when Landry started getting more targets than him? He throws a connection fit. Then he gets released, and then he goes and gets on the Rams.
Well, on the topic of OBJ, I think he did mature a lot moving over to the Rams and was more than willing to step back for Cooper Kupp, and kind of was... I think he was really self-aware with the Rams. He knew where he stood. He knew he was going to be productive and valuable on that offense while not being the number one guy.
It's easy when they're winning, right? You go from a team that's out of the playoffs, right, to a team right now that is fighting for a Super Bowl. Of course. He wants a ring because he's at the tail end of his career, right? He wants a ring and he gets it. And so I think now next year, when it's fresh, right, all the teams are even, and things might not be going the way that the Rams want, right? And what I mean by that is they're losing. Well, I think he's going to start having some of those episodes, if you call them, again.
Don. Cooper Kupp.
So, Nick, OBJ, he really had to step back and realize that this is a Super Bowl team, and if I need to get a ring, I need to mature and realize that there are better wide receivers, and I think that's where he matured.
So we agree that he's on, that he realized, I got to put my attitude aside, and I'm going to be the wide receiver too, and because I want to win the Super Bowl. And what I'm saying is next year, when all the slates are clean, and they're not fighting for a Super Bowl, right? But let's say they start off 2-4, right, in the first 6 weeks. I could definitely see Robert Woods say to the media he wants more target load if he's not getting what he thinks. And so what I'm trying to get at the end of the day is Jamar Chase, if he's open at all or if he's not double teamed, what's Joe Burrow going to do? Throw it to him, and that's good for PPR. Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen's, Kirk Cousins looking at Justin Jefferson over Adam Thielen right now to give the ball to, and he's young, right? This is Jamar Chase is 21 years old. Justin Jefferson's 23. You got that athletic ability that you want for PPR. So I think they're first-round picks.
So for Cooper Kupp, for me, if it's a 1-year redraft, I'd take him. I think...
Take him where?
Oh.
So in some mock drafts right now, Cooper Kupp, just so you know, is being taken as the 4th overall pick.
I wouldn't take him there.
No.
I wouldn't take him there. There's so many good running backs that I wouldn't take him, and I would rather wait because wide receiver is so deep that I would rather take a running back than to reach for Cooper Kupp.
Okay.
But
No, I agree.
for a dynasty, I wouldn't take him. Just plain and simple.
So what are you doing? Are you riding in first or second class, or are you selling your ticket on him?
I'm selling my ticket on him.
You're selling your ticket on
Yeah,
Cooper Kupp?
I think he's really good trade value, and I think Justin Jefferson is the guy for dynasty in terms of...
You guys love Jefferson, don't you?
Well, he's just... Here's the thing. He doesn't have a great QB. Not good, not bad.
But he's steady. He's consistent.
Yeah, he's consistent. He's good. He's 22, 23, around there. And he's already, top 10 as 22, 23. He's, in my opinion, not even in his prime yet. And he's putting up 20, 30 points every game.
Right, he's ranked number 5 right now.
All right, guys.
I think he's ranked number 1.
So let me put this in. Let me give you guys some context.
In terms of wide receivers.
Cooper Kupp in a full PPR league scored 442 points this year. Okay. The wide receiver 2, Deebo Samuel, scored 348.7. So if Cooper Kupp also had 16 touchdowns this year. Okay. My favorite stat when it comes to Cooper Kupp, if Cooper Kupp had no touchdowns this past year, he still would have been the wide receiver 1 by 4 points. He had 145 receptions for 1,947 yards on 191 targets and had a 75.9% catch rate. Matt Stafford, when he had Calvin Johnson, was the best connection in the league for fantasy. And Matt Stafford is well known for having his favorite guy like Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams.
But
what I'm trying to say is he's having one heck of a season, right?
Yeah.
Breaking all these records. Is he consistent? And so when I'm picking a first round pick, I'm looking for someone that I know is consistent, right? That's someone that can continuously get high amount of touchdowns and high amount of fantasy points. And so I think for like a 1 year, because that's what you were saying, right? I think, there's better options. If he comes out next year and has another great, 1,500 yard season or 1,000, whatever.
Yeah.
Top 10 top 10 performance. I think then the following year I'd draft him with the first round pick.
So here's what basically, to get to the point of it, I'm riding second class for Cooper Kupp because 4th overall I think is very high, and that's just where he's going in some mock drafts. The official ADP is not out yet. So what I'm going to say to that is I think Cooper Kupp, because of his ceiling, and now with Matt Stafford, who loves having a favorite wide receiver and giving them double-digit targets a game, I consider Cooper Kupp a first-round pick in redrafts. In a dynasty, I will keep him unless someone gives me a ridiculous offer for him. So I would let people come to me with Cooper Kupp, but otherwise I'd keep him. And I would ride second class because I would take Cooper Kupp in the first round, but not as high as a top 5 or 6 pick.
You want to know why I wouldn't keep Cooper Kupp? He's really good, and I think he's going to have a great season next year too. But here's the thing. You can only play so many years before you start declining and fast. So I wouldn't want to keep Kupp and Matt Stafford because at some point they're going to start declining, and while they start doing bad, Justin Jefferson is going to be booming.
Yeah,
in his prime.
I think the ceiling is just too high. So Jason says to ask him later when the season comes closer because of the current hype and him going 4th overall in some mock drafts is too high for him. I essentially agree with him in that we both ride second class for Cooper Kupp. All right, on to Deebo Samuel.
He had a really good season. And he's going to have a good season. I don't think he's going to have a great season like he did. I think he is at the peak of his career. And, I mean, their whole game plan is just give it to Debo. And he's really good. He's going to have another good season, but I don't think it's going to be like he did this year.
So where are you riding on his hype train?
I don't know.
So
honestly,
basically, if you don't think he's going to do as well, but you think he's still going to be really good because the offense is centered around him, I would consider that second class.
Well, here's the thing. I want to wait and see what the 49ers do during the offseason.
Yeah. I mean, Kyle Shanahan's a great coach, a great schemer. I think they're still going to find a way to get Debo the ball. And now with him being probably their best runner as well as their best receiver, minus maybe George Kittle, I think he'll have some volume going into next year. But I'm selling his ticket. I'm sorry.
I agree.
I don't consider him to be a top 5 for fantasy anyway. I don't consider him to be a top 5 talent, and I also don't trust him. I think he's hit his ceiling. He has hit his peak, and one thing that stood out to me is that before this past season, every single season of Debo Samuel's football career, it includes, I don't know about high school, but to include college, he has always gotten injured at least once. This was the first full healthy season he has ever had. He's already 26 years old. I think Debo Samuel has peaked, and as the wide receiver 2, he's probably going into next year in drafts as an early to mid second round pick. I think that's way too early for me. I don't trust it. I take him in the 3rd or 4th round.
Well, here's the thing about Debo. Yeah, he peaked, but this is the first, like you said, the first healthy season he had, and look what he did. I think he is going to have a good season next year, and I'm going second class.
Jason said the same thing as me. He's selling his ticket, finishes the wide receiver 2, and is definitely not willing to draft him that high next year.
So right now, I am sell a ticket too, because right now going into 2022, he's ranked number 20 overall. He is already 26 years of age, which, as we know, around that age, what you were saying, wide receivers are starting to decline, and
that was for running backs, but he is older.
Right, he's older.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think he was the focal point of the offense this year, and he still only finished 20 overall. And I think, I'm not going to touch any 49ers wide receivers right now.
Really?
Any of them.
You wouldn't even take Kittle in a redraft?
For what I'm saying, wide receiver.
Oh, okay.
For Dynasty, I'd take Ayuk.
Okay.
No,
honestly,
none of them. Because till they prove to me that they can be consistent enough that I could put them in my starting lineup, I would rather take a chance at a young guy, right? Guy that, for Dynasty, a guy that I know that can eventually grow into potentially something, right? Right now, Debo is starting to decline. He's not getting any better. And I'm not touching the 49ers offense. Wide receiver, anything.
Really?
Now, no. Debo had the most, you couldn't tackle Debo this year. He was amazing. I don't know. I guess we haven't paid quite as much attention to him in previous years. I think he hasn't been as relevant because of injuries. I haven't not seen him as a good wide receiver. And with the new quote-unquote wide back position that he's adopted, which I think is really cool, and in Kyle Shanahan's system, I think is going to continue to work well. And I think he continues to be, for the next couple of years, top 15, but I just don't quite see him. I see him with top 10 upside.
Yeah.
Okay. But I'm drafting him on the low end of that.
Right.
Not as a top 5 wide receiver.
The whole 49ers offense to me is just a nightmare. Because all of the positions, except for tight end, right, is sharing snaps. So you got a crowded backfield for running back. You got a crowded wide receiving room. For fantasy, it's a nightmare. I think Debo Samuel is going to have a better real life performance, or real life I guess, value or whatever than fantasy. So I'm not touching them.
As far as fantasy goes, I think the 49ers are just a much better and productive version of the Patriots.
True.
I like Debo, but I'm not taking him where he's ranked.
Okay. All right, Dom, start us off with the next guy, Jamar Chase.
Jamar Chase, well, we all thought that they were crazy drafting Jamar Chase, right? I said this earlier.
I did. I think they should have taken Penei Sewell.
Yeah,
You also
including
thought
me.
it.
And I am wrong. They made the right choice. Obviously, we all seen it. Jamar Chase is incredibly consistent. He can take a 1-yard pass 70 yards up the field. And I think he is a lot of... So Joe Burrow's done really good, and I think Jamar Chase is a lot of that because of how much he can do run after catch.
Well, it helped that they already have an established relationship after winning a national championship together at LSU.
Right.
So where do you stand? Are you like on his hype train?
I'm first class.
Okay, Nick.
Oh boy, I can't wait. I'm all aboard the hype train, baby.
So the three of us are on the same boat. We are both riding first class on this hype train.
So okay, let's throw some stats at him, okay? So he was drafted in 2021, so last year, right? In the first round, 5th overall. He had 81 receiving recreation catches, whatever. He has 13 touchdowns, 1,455 yards. Okay? Oh my goodness, what a stud. I can't wait. He is ranked number 2 right now for next year. He is a stud. If I have like 107, 108-ish in the first round, I'm not going to be picking up like a Kareem Hunt or some timeshare running back. I'm going to get myself a stud in wide receiver, and I'm going to love it when people trash me, okay, for drafting him.
Oh my God.
And then they want to trade for him in this season when he goes off again. I'm all aboard this hype train. The stats prove it. Okay? And he's just only 21 years old. 21 years old. And he is a stud. Okay? 21 years old. What were you doing at 21 years old? Let's see. Taking college classes. Well, not
13.
you. Not you. This man, Jamar Chase, is putting the league on notice. And he's got T. Higgins, right? And Tyler Boyd that is good enough to get the attention, but they can't double team Jamar Chase. And I love it. Oh,
Nick's got fire under his ass right now.
Holy shoot. I think he's a little bit crazy, but...
Well, okay, I think Jamar Chase definitely has wide receiver 1 potential. And after having those kinds of stats at 21 years old, I think is the point Nick and I are trying to make. I think the ceiling is infinitely high, almost infinitely high for this guy. And what helps... especially the narrative and basically the safety blanket for that is the fact that he has such a great relationship and connection with Joe Burrow, with having played with him previously. Now, so I saved Jason for last because he's the only one who is not riding first class on this hype train. He's selling his ticket on Jamar Chase.
Oh,
really?
Stop it.
Really?
Stop. This is why I'm calling it right now. Jason would never win the fantasy championship right there. He's selling high on a stud. On a stud.
Okay, all right. So he's selling his ticket because he says he's an absolute stud, but thinks that the narrative behind his historic rookie season will have him going higher than his value, in his opinion, in drafts.
Yeah. And we look at Joe Burrow and we say he's had a really good season, right? But most of that was Jamar Chase.
Yeah, Joe Burrow wouldn't have had this, and the Cincinnati Bengals wouldn't have had the success that they had if they hadn't taken Jamar Chase. Now they still need... Yeah. They still need to fix that offensive line.
Yes.
But nonetheless, I think this is a great start, making it to a Super Bowl at 21 years old. Being the wide receiver 1 for that team is incredible.
I cannot wait for this next guy.
Now,
oh my goodness.
Jackpot Joey Burrow. Let's go.
Okay, Joey, I think Joe Burrow in a 1 year, I'm selling my ticket.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
Because
Makes
there's
sense.
so many.
I think you're wrong, but yeah, makes sense.
there's so many other QBs that did better. Matt Stafford, I think he did a lot better, and I think he was underrated too.
The last 5 or 6 games Stafford had where he threw like a pick a game just kind of worried me.
Well, and here's the thing about Joe Burrow. Jamar Chase gets injured, what do?
You still got T. Higgins, who's a stud, and you still got Tyler Boyd.
He's got a point, so I'll go ahead
and in Dynasty, he's first class because he's young. He brought the Bengals to a Super Bowl with all the doubt on him. I mean, all the commentators, not commentators, but people were saying, 2, and they're just saying they were going to win 2 games, 3 games. And even with all that doubt, he brought them to a Super Bowl with his teammate, too. So I think he's first class all the way in Dynasty.
I'm right. Yeah, I'm okay. First class for Dynasty because he's special. But in redraft, I'm gonna go ahead and say I love this guy. I'm so excited for him. I think he's been the face of the NFL the past month. But I'm riding second class only because I think that offensive line is a liability and he needs help. He needs protection.
And that's where I agree with you.
Okay. Now, I can't wait. So, I'm going to throw this quick little fact in here. Right now for 2022, he is listed as the 3rd quarterback taken off behind Josh Allen. Josh Allen is the first one, and Patrick Mahomes is the second, and Joe Burrow is the 3rd for Dynasty, okay?
Okay.
But I don't care if it's Dynasty. I don't care if it's Standard. You take my man, Joey.
No.
All the way. Hold on. Let's look at some facts here. Let's look at some facts. So last year, right, he got injured. Okay, so I consider this as really his first year playing. Okay. So he completed 366 passes for a percentage rate of 70.4, which is pretty serviceable.
That led the league.
Right.
He had the highest completion percentage this year.
He had 4,611 passing yards, which means for fantasy, especially, he's in an offense where they like to throw it, right? And this is with Joe Mixon, who really became a top 5 running back. So this is with Joe Mixon becoming a top 5 running back. He had 34 touchdowns and only 14 interceptions with a quarterback rate of 108.3. I drafted him last year in a 1-year league, and I was laughed at. And look what he did.
In your defense, you took him really low, and you ended up being the QB 8. So it was a good pick for you. I think you took him in like the 11th round.
Yeah, and so I am all aboard the train right now. First class ticket because you got Jamar Chase. You got a stud wide receiver 1 to throw to. And you've got more than serviceable wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3.
Okay. So, hold on. Jason says he rides second class because Burrow finished as the QB 8. And next season, while he can't see him jumping into the top 3 in terms of fantasy, he can't see him dropping lower than the 8th either. So he's coasting for Joe Burrow.
I love Joe Burrow, and I'm first class for him for Dynasty, but that doesn't mean that I wouldn't take other QBs above him. I think Justin Herbert is, for Dynasty, and even 1 years, he's super good, and he's above Joe Burrow all the way.
The volume is so high for Justin Herbert because he has so many pass attempts. He's not as consistent, but his ceiling is incredibly high with having those few 50-plus point games.
And I think also he needs better wide receivers, more consistent wide receivers, because Mike Williams, right, is injured a lot of the time, and I think. You got a stud running back like...
The word through the grapevine is that the rookie from this past season that the Chargers drafted, Joshua Palmer, seems like an up-and-comer.
I got offered a second-round pick, 209 for him. And I was like...
For who?
for Joshua. I have Joshua
Palmer,
and
okay.
I declined it because I agree. I think he's got enough of a role in that offense that he's going to be a rising star for that wide receiver core.
All right, everyone plug your ears for this next guy because Nick, the fire under Nick's ass is about to get a lot bigger and a lot harder. Go ahead and talk about Jalen Waddle, Nick.
I love Jalen Waddle.
Oh, thanks, Nick.
All right, so this is what, before I get into the stats, this is what I'm going to say. The new head coach for the Dolphins said to start him every week for fantasy, which means the game script is going to be give the ball to Jalen Waddle. That's what that means. Okay, right now, going to 2022, he is ranked 30th. Not so bad. But guess what? He had 104 receptions.
And that broke the rookie record for receptions.
Yeah, he had 6 touchdowns, 1,015 yards. First year, 1,000-yard season.
He was the wide receiver 11 for PPR and the wide receiver 16 for half PPR.
I am first class. I mean, between him and Jamar Chase, these young wide receivers, I think this is the year where you go, if you're doing Dynasty, you ship your first round pick for this year, and you go get yourself a young stud like Jalen Waddle, okay? Or you give a first round pick plus for Jamar Chase. I think this is the year where you can really capitalize on the wide receiving pool.
And to put it into context for the listeners, the new head coach for the Miami Dolphins is Mike McDaniel, who was the offensive coordinator for the 49ers, who just gave Deebo Samuel the number 2 wide receiver stats, basically, or the opportunity to become the wide receiver 2 in fantasy. While Jalen Waddle is not a tackle breaker because he's a smaller guy, he is very fast. I can see him on a lot of jet sweeps and things like that.
Wide receiver screens.
He looks like he could basically be a good deep threat as well as a good safe I'll bring Madden into this, max security type of receiver as well. So yeah, I'm second class for Jalen Waddle only because I don't know how much I trust Tua, and if Jalen Waddle becomes the game plan, I don't see him being as consistent because defenses will know to watch for him as Deebo Samuel.
Well, I think another play you got to look out for fantasy is Gesicki for tight end, because if they can get him more involved, then I don't think they really will focus as much on Waddle. But if he was like last year where he was hit and miss, they could really not double team him, like leave him open, then I think Waddle's going to get double teamed and it's going to be a lot of...
But nonetheless, he was the wide receiver 11 for PPR, like I said, and I think I would draft him around that. So I'd have to say I ride second class because I don't think I would reach for him either. In mid to early second round, I'd probably take him late second round for PPR next year. In a redraft.
In a redraft, I would take him second class, like Brandon just said, and I completely agree with him because Tua, I mean...
You would take him second round, you mean?
Yeah.
And you ride second class for his hype train?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I don't trust Tua either. I mean, Tua turned the ball over. I don't... He was crucially overhyped going into it, and he had a lot of pressure on him, and he just doesn't... He's the most mid QB. Like...
Average.
Mid-average. Because he did really well the second half of the season. But he's not, like, outstanding, you know. When you talk about football, you know, Tua doesn't really, you know, pop out for you. And that's why I wouldn't take him where he is.
Okay.
And for Dynasty, I would be first class because he might not be consistent, which I really want in a wide receiver, but he is very young. He's already doing super well. And for a dynasty, I'd go all the way in second round for him.
Especially in a PPR where having the reception record for a rookie is a big green flag, you could say. For Jason, Jason is the skeptic of all of us, definitely. He's selling Jalen Waddle high.
No way.
Because after being the wide receiver 11 and setting the record for rookies, he'd love to have him next year, but isn't willing to take him off around as the wide receiver 11. So, he and I are somewhat in the same boat. He's a big Lions fan, so I'm gonna, if he were here, I would let him talk about it first. He's riding first class for running back DeAndre Swift. He wants Swift as his running back. That has nothing to do with bias as being a Lions fan. Wink, wink. Before he got hurt last season in Week 12, he was the RB5 through Week 11. He also had the most targets, receptions, and the second most receiving yards among running backs over the same time period. So Jason's willing to draft him as early as he has to secure him on his team because targets are everything in PPR, in his words. And I'll go ahead and agree with that. While I'm not a Lions fan, I'm first class for him because I take him just outside the top 5. And if I'm in a dynasty, I might be willing to take him at the number 5 overall spot.
For DeAndre Swift, I'm pumping the brakes.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, because here's the thing about the Lions. They had really good talent, but terrible management. Barry Sanders. Look at him. Probably the greatest running back of all time. And he can even
if you're talking
playoffs.
fantasy, though, Barry Sanders would have been wonderful because he was the offense. And that's basically what DeAndre Swift looks like.
I think what Dominic's is trying to say is he thinks that, the organization's going to mess this up somehow.
Yeah, and DeAndre Swift, their O-line is not
better.
Good.
It's better.
It's better, but here's the thing. It's got better, but it's still not that great. And his whole game is the receiving, and that can be really great.
He's great in open field after the catch.
He's not an Austin Eckler, though.
No, but with the target share that he's going to get in a full PPR, I think it definitely has the potential to be a top 5 back.
I'm not taking him top 5.
The only thing I said potential. In a redraft, I'll go ahead and take him late first round. But what ruined it for him this year was touchdown opportunity. He's a smaller guy, and
he only got 2 touchdowns,
and he's a receiving back. Yes, so the touchdowns he needs to get some more touchdowns, but the volume, the opportunity, and the talent is there.
Yeah. So for me, I'm kind of at a dilemma. So he's either to me a second class or pump the brakes. I'd say not sell high because he's not really, there's nothing really much to sell on right now because he got injured in week 12, like you were saying. And so for me, the fact that really gets me is that he, for rushing, had 2 fumbles, in 12 games. I get it, he's a rookie. But personally, I like drafting running backs with ball security, right? But the reason why I'm second class is because I see what you see. So the Lions, they have no one to throw to, right? Mm-hmm. And so that means they're going to rely on a pass-catching back like DeAndre Swift. And that's why I think he's ranked number 4 overall right now in PPR Dynasty, because the people that are making these rankings also see what you see for that passing. But I just, at the same time, to play devil's advocate, what is a good defensive coordinator or a good head coach going to do? They're going to load the box, right? Because if Amon-Ra St. Brown, if he's going to beat you that week, he's going to beat you, right? I think as a defensive coordinator, You're okay with that. So I think you load the box, and I think that makes a undersized running back life that much harder. And so the only, and so that's why I'm second class, because I can see both sides of it. And would I take him 4 overall? No. But if I'm late first round pick and he's there because he is only 23 years of age, right? I'm going to take him, but I'm not going to feel good about it. I'm not going to go out there, after I draft him at B-dubs or wherever we are, skipping, about how happy I am. I'm going to be like, we'll see. Right? Kind of like how I was about Antonio Gibson last year.
Yeah, I definitely see him having a lower ceiling, being on a bad team and being a smaller back. I can see him being a boomer bust guy.
Yeah.
But I can also see him going off for 30-plus points.
Right. And I think for me, when I'm drafting, right, especially for Dynasty, I want consistency. And I want high upside. Because for Dynasty, if there's any viewers that don't know this, you get to keep your team every single year, right? And then you draft rookies, and so I tend to like to play it safe. I like all those guys that are big name, because to me that means that they're consistent. To have a big name like Hopkins or like Devontae Adams, it's because they have good seasons year in, year out. And that's what I really look for. But if I'm going to do a standard league, I'm going to go for more of that boom or bust. Like,
and for running, you do the same thing for running backs too. Because now that I think of it, you drafted Zeke at the number 5 overall last year.
Yeah.
So you went with the name, commodity, and the volume rather than the young hype, because you knew you would probably get some consistency with his volume.
And it turned out okay. I mean, he ended up
the RB8 is
the RB8.
Yeah, which isn't terrible.
I mean, I drafted him 5th, and he got 8, RB8, whatever. I mean, yeah, it didn't turn out, but I think in the long run, I think for me, that strategy works out.
Okay. This next guy that...
can I say something about DeAndre Swift?
Yeah.
I don't like him.
Let it out.
I don't like him because I just don't.
I don't like him.
I really don't, because look at the guys that are ahead of him. Kamara, JT, McCaffrey, Henry, Mixon, Eckler.
Kamara's falling off a cliff next year.
No.
Yeah,
nope,
he is.
Nope.
Well, he's not even going to be on the field. He's going to be...
I would even
not
take...
even on the field.
No. I would even take Najee Harris over Swift. And with all those guys, there is 0 chance that he's going to be top 5 potential. There's no way.
Okay. I can see your point, but it's wrong. All right, on to the next guy.
He's good. He's good, just not better than the running backs right now.
No, I see what you're saying. All right, Nick.
Also, Nick, I disagree with you.
On what?
Because you said that they have no people to throw to. And I think that's where you're wrong, because they have Hawkinson, they have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is an up-and-comer. And with those two, I think that can take a lot of targets away from Swift.
Okay, so I have this guy in on the hype train list because he was a big steal this past year. He was considered to be washed until he was utilized in the run game for the Arizona Cardinals, and he ended up getting a lot of goal line opportunity. Nick, what do you think about James Conner?
I'm pumped the brakes.
I completely agree with you, Nick.
So we're all in agreement on pumping the brakes on James Conner.
I don't like this guy. I really don't. Not as like a personal thing, but as a fantasy football, because he's already aged 26. Right now, he's ranked 80 overall going to next year. He's in a snap share with Kenyon Drake, right? No,
Chase
Edmonds. Sorry. Yep. And for last year, he got 202 rushing attempts, 15 touchdowns, 752 yards, and 2 fumbles. To me, that ball security is an issue. You got Chase Edmonds, who is serviceable. the year prior to where we're making this, when he was a starter, he was serviceable. I mean, he was just like a James Conner. I mean, he's already 26 years old. I just don't feel comfortable drafting him.
With his pass catching ability, Chase Edmonds was projected to be an RB2 this past year, and I drafted him as such.
Yeah.
And he ended up, being a bit of a disappointment. He got injured, but James Conner, I believe, had a peak year, and now it will be interesting now that Chase Edmonds is a free agent if he does not stay with Arizona and James Conner becomes the guy. But I think where he will have his highest ceiling is if Chase Edmonds is still there and is utilized more as a first, second round back, and then have James Conner in the shorter yardage plays to get the first down and goal line opportunity.
Well, let's look at him. Not going to stats, but just in Pittsburgh. I mean, he wasn't one of those guys that you felt comfortable drafting. I mean, very high. And I mean, let's think about the Cardinals. What are they known for? You got Kyler Murray,
D-Hop.
Well, yeah, but hold on, Kyler Murray, who's a very mobile quarterback, right? That when you can have him throw the ball a lot because he's not going to be a guy that's going to force that ball into tight windows a lot, because at the end of the day, he can just run it for yards. And then you got D-Hop, right, who's a stud wide receiver. And you got Chris, what's his name? Christian Kirk.
Christian Kirk, yeah. Slot receiver.
Who's a good option too. So I just see the Cardinals are more of a passing offense than running.
It's a high-powered offense that utilized him basically on and around the goal line.
Yeah.
So Jason is on the same boat as us there, or train there. Because he was very touchdown dependent, and even if he were to become the only running back in that backfield, it's with the goal line work that he had, even if he has the same opportunity next year, it's very unlikely that he continues to be a top 6 back.
Right, and I mean, the only way that I feel like he's better for fantasy-wise for like a play in DraftKings. So like a guy that you can get cheap for that's a boom or bust for tight end. For touchdown dependent. I think his fantasy becomes touchdown dependent. I think that's good for daily fantasy, but not like a year-long, either dynasty or standard.
So these last 2 guys that we're going to talk about, I added on here because they're both very young. They're both rookies from this past season, and I think they still have some hype to them after this year, while they didn't quite meet expectations and didn't end up in exactly the situation that we would have liked. They still have an absolute shit ton of potential, and under some conditions could end up being top 3 at their position next year. So Dom, talk about Kyle Pitts. What do you think? Where are you on his hype train?
I honestly don't know. I think he was so hyped going into the year that we didn't get what we wanted or expected out of him. But I still think he had an okay year. He only had 1 touchdown, but I mean, what it really comes down to is give him the ball more, and he needs a better QB.
Okay, where he lacked was touchdowns for sure.
Only 1 touchdown.
Atlanta's pretty much in a rebuild. Matt Ryan's old. We don't know if Arthur Smith is quite the right guy for the job as head coach.
Yeah.
So Kyle Pitts is a TBD, but as good as a talent as he is, I ride second class because I think he's a pretty safe guy to go with, as talented as he is. He'll still produce. I mean, he was the tight end 6 this past year. I think he definitely has the potential to be top 3 next year, even on a not so good offense. So for those reasons, I'd go ahead and ride second class for Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, I'm second class too. I mean,
Jason agrees as well.
Yeah, because even though he only got 1 touchdown, he still had 1,026 yards, and he had 68 receptions, which is good for PPR. And I think what Dominic was saying, they need to feed him the ball more. And I think he was, what did you say, tight end 6? last year?
Yes.
And I mean, he still had a really good year. And I mean, in one of the leagues that I won the championship in, I had him as my starting tight end, and I just left him in there. So I think he has a high ceiling as long as he becomes more of a focal point. The thing that I can really see clouding his growth, stunting the growth, whatever you want to call it, is if Calvin Ridley comes back. Because if he comes back, he's going to be that kind of guy that is going to get the ball a lot. I mean,
there's rumors that he's probably going to get traded, but he's a big question mark right now because he left the league because of his mental health.
Right,
so.
and one of those rumors was that he was going to go to the Patriots for a second-round pick.
You're holding on to that one.
I'd love to see that happen.
I mean, it makes sense, but I'm second class, but I'm not really excited about it. I mean,
okay.
He's a safe option, I think. So I'm just going to draft him, and whenever I can, whenever tight ends start going off the board, because as we know, where tight ends get picked, what round, it just depends on who you're drafting with. And he's a young guy, so I think that you get him one of the first couple tight ends.
Yeah, in a redraft, I think he's more of a 4th or 5th round pick.
Yeah.
But in Dynasty startup and keeper league, keeper wouldn't even really matter unless you're keeping, 6 players.
Right.
So in a Dynasty, I'd go ahead and in a Dynasty startup, I would go ahead and take Kyle Pitts maybe in the probably still 4th round, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I would for both Dynasty and redraft. I'm second class.
Okay. Now, for this last guy to close out the show.
Oh, my God.
Only one thing needs to happen, and all of a sudden, this guy becomes all the hype for next year.
I love this guy.
Javonte Williams had the most broken tackles this past year and had an exact 50 to 50% touch or snap share with Melvin Gordon. So as Jason has here in his notes that he sent me, 30% of all players that tried to tackle this guy couldn't. If Melvin Gordon does not stay in Denver, this guy easily becomes
top 5.
A top 5 overall pick in redraft and probably top 3 in Dynasty or keeper.
Well, right now, he's ranked for 2022 for Dynasty number 8 overall.
And he's only 21 years old.
Yeah, I am first class all the way. And yeah, Melvin Gordon is still there. I would take that risk. See, if he leaves, it pays off big time. And even with Melvin Gordon still there, he's still putting up around 20 to 10 points a game. And, he's still getting a lot of receptions, too. So it's not even like he's not getting anything in the backfield either. He's just so good.
Yeah, he's a great all-around talent.
Where do you have him at, Brandon? Jody?
So, as far as where I am on his hype train, obviously, if Melvin Gordon leaves, I'm riding first class on that bad boy. He is a great all-around talent. He's a great pass catcher. He's fairly rugged. He looks great as a talent for the Broncos and for fantasy. Now, as far as right now, if I'd be willing to take the risk on him on the off chance or chance that Gordon does leave, I'd probably go ahead and take him in the 3rd round in a redraft, only because in a redraft, that is, because if Melvin Gordon stays as of preseason, he has the potential to be the number 1 and take over, but he would probably still split with Gordon for the first half of the season and maybe even continue to have a 50% snap share. So, yeah, that one's tough. I'll go ahead and ride second class only because it's a big risk on... It's a big risk on taking him as a top 5 pick or as a starter even if Gordon stays, because he was only a flex this year.
Even if Gordon gets injured, or leaves, you can get him for a pretty cheap price anyway. And I think, honestly, for me, I pump the brakes.
Really?
I understand.
As how it is right now, as February 19th, okay, 2022, I am pumped the brakes because, as we know, it's a exact 50-50 snap share with Melvin Gordon. We have a new head coach. But they're selling the team, so there's going to be new owners. Last year...
Nathaniel Hackett, the new head coach, is an offensive guy. He was the OC for Green Bay. That's only good for that offense.
I know, but let's say last year for rushing, he had 203 attempts, 4 touchdowns, 903 yards, 2 fumbles. Receiving, not too bad, 3 touchdowns,
he had 3 receiving touchdowns, 7 total on the season. Now, Nick, double that. And what does he have? If he takes the 195 overall points that Melvin Gordon had and you add it to the 200 or 201 that Javonte Williams had, he becomes the RB1.
Well, yeah, 100%. If Melvin Gordon leaves, right, or gets injured and he becomes the guy, I'm first-class ticket. But right now, as if February, today's date, if I got an offer... 19th. If I got an offer for Javonte Williams for a first-round pick, I'd say, In a
dynasty, I'm taking the chance and I'm trading for Javonte Williams.
You would trade a first-round pick for Javonte Williams.
You would have to trade more than just one first-round pick. He could easily become the RB1.
No, that's what I'm saying. But for me, listeners, I'm very cautious, right? I like that consistency. I need to see Javonte Williams become consistent. I want him to get that opportunity and then go off. And yes, I'll pay a price and I'll get him or whatever.
Yep.
But I like to draft guys that I know that I can have a solid, very good, consistent team, and then I make trades later. Depending on how the season goes. So, the high risk, high reward. There's plenty of other guys that I would rather have a high risk, high reward situation.
You want to talk about high risk, high reward? Jason's willing to take that risk. He's first class all the way on Javonte Williams.
I agree with him, and he is high risk, high reward. I would rather take him, and you can even put him at your flex, and he would still do really good for that spot.
Yep.
Even if Melvin Gordon stays. So it's not like if Melvin Gordon stays, it's not like I'm getting nothing out of him. I'm still getting something. I can put him on my flex. You'd do good there.
Well, that was our Hype Train segment, guys, and that concludes episode 1. Thank you, Bum Nation, and tune in next week. All right, we'll see you guys later.